Happy New Year. So I want to set the stage for this and maybe your expectations. This past fall, the church, in preparation for what we're going to be about this year, and I'm going to speak to that, put together some training for our leaders and our teachers. And John Card in particular, I want to call him out, so remember the name John Card, asked if I would teach a segment to our leaders and teachers about the topic that we're going to get into this evening and for the rest of the year. I said that I would. When I taught our teachers and leaders, Dr. Young happened to attend, and other staff members. And Dr. Young felt like you should hear the message that was delivered that evening. Remember that, Dr. Ed Young. In preparation for tonight and this very moment, Ben Young, that's B-E-N, same last name as Ed, edited this message to format it for our service. So here's what I want to say before we get into it. If you are here today and what you hear from me, it inspires you and motivates you, excites you, changes your life, the church has my permission to deliver to you all of my contact information, and you can call, text, or write and tell me how awesome it was and how wonderful I really am. If, however, it goes the other way, the three names I mentioned, John Card, Dr. Ed Young, Dr. Ben Young, 6400 Woodway, take it all to them because, frankly, I had nothing to do with it. So if we can agree that that's the parameters, then we're going to get into this. I don't know if you're familiar or if you know what our focus is going to be in 2020. It's very timely. More on that later. But I believe the church has it titled, it's Focus Your Influence. Let me just get to a word that I know it as. It's called evangelism. Evangelism. Now, some of you are longtime churchgoers, and when you hear that word and you know a message is coming, some of you think, okay, well, this is going to be about a number of Bible verses, and what exactly are you supposed to say to someone in regards to sharing your faith, and maybe there's some apologetics involved when people ask these hard questions. There's a place for that, I'm sure, but that's not this message. We're going to do this a little different. I do have a Bible here, but I'm going to tell you what this message is not. We're not going to talk about Bible verses today. I am a Christian. I do read the Bible, but this is not the message. We're going to go through a lot of verses, can I just say. We're not going to have an apologetics discussion about what to say when hard questions come. When John Card asked me to prepare, he gave me an open slate. And what I feel the Lord gave to me last fall and with you today is my experience with evangelism, specifically the people that were involved in bringing me to where I am now in front of you. Those people. Like some of you, I had the benefit, the good fortune of having a Christian environment when I grew up. Ben said I'm from the hill country. Austin, Texas, is place of birth. Lived there for a lot of my growing up. And being in a family of Christian people, on the hottest week in July they could find, we would go to family Christian retreats. Some of you go to those retreats. They had a youth program. And I was very blessed that at one of those youth programs in a Christian retreat, there was a youth pastor, and there were probably 50, 60 kids. I'm 13 or 14 years old at the time. And at this church camp deep in East Texas, on a July night, a youth pastor says he puts a chair out in the middle of a room They don't do that here. But he put a chair out in the middle of the room. He said, I want to know who's ready to make a decision for Jesus Christ tonight. Who's ready to get real with Jesus Christ tonight? Who wants to turn their life over to Jesus Christ tonight? I felt that still small voice say, go ahead. And so me and several other kids would go and sit in that chair in the middle of a room, and everybody else would come and lay hands and pray over us. That night I accepted Christ. I forgot to mention, this is very important. I'm going to have you write 5 words, not 5 verses, not 5 sayings. If you can find a pen or a pencil, only 5 words. You can even use an offering envelope. You can use the palm of your hand, the palm of the hand of the person sitting next to you. 5 words. Back on point. I came to Christ because of a youth pastor. I want you to write the word pastor. Just pastor. P-A-S-T-O-R. Pastor. A pastor delivered a message, and he invited me to accept Jesus Christ and become a Christian, which I did. Some of you have done the same thing. I'm very appreciative of that pastor. He was from out of town. I've never seen him since. I don't know where he is. Couldn't tell you. But that night, that moment, he was very big in my life. A pastor started it all off. So like a lot of 13, 14-year-olds, you knew you made a decision. And you sensed something was good here, but like a lot of teenagers, I was not going to church. I wasn't a part of a youth group. I wasn't from here. I really didn't know what it meant. And just maybe like a lot of you, I finished out my high school years knowing that I'd made a decision, but not really knowing how to live that. Going to school, doing what you do in high school. So we'll go a little further. And I get to college. And while I'm in school, about midway through, an acquaintance, that's a big word, and that's the second word, acquaintance. A young man that he wasn't in the circle that I ran with. He wasn't from my hometown. He wasn't a high school buddy. He felt led to ask me if I wanted to go to a Campus Crusade for Christ meeting. You know that organization. They're still, I believe, on a lot of college campuses, Campus Crusade for Christ. I think that probably took him a lot of guts to do that. I was living like every other college kid lives. You know what that looks like. But he felt led to ask me to go to a Campus Crusade for Christ meeting. I accepted. I got on the back of his motorcycle, and in gym shorts with no helmets, I don't recommend this today, we would go to Campus Crusade for Christ meetings on our university campus. And the significance, and why I had you write the word acquaintance, that young man is responsible for introducing me to Christian fellowship. I didn't have that. I didn't know what that was. But it shouldn't surprise you to say that way back then, the folks that I met, some of them to this day are some of my closest friends. Does that surprise you? And it's been a few years since I've been in college. I'm so grateful to that acquaintance. We can't even call him a friend at this point. He's an acquaintance. So keep that in mind. So we're going to keep going. I graduated that morning, and that night there was a commission service, and the next day I'm active duty for the U.S. Marine Corps. And that ushered in 3 years of learning how to dodge bombs and bullets in the desert and firing them back. That's what I did. That's what a lot of Marines do, as you know. I'm going to give you two sides of this. On the one hand, it was a very successful tour of duty. For starters, I'm alive. You don't think about that when you're there. I appreciate it now a little more. Number two, truth be known, I really didn't get hurt. Nothing of significance. Little side comment for you. I did get too close to a 155 howitzer. That's a big bomb. And my hearing's a little off. After having 4 girls, I can tell you God knew what he was doing. I view it as a blessing. It was a good tour of duty. I had good commanding officers. I had a good unit. They're over there still. I had good men. I have a regret, and I'm just sharing because you're my church family. Dr. Young's heard this. Ben's heard it a couple of times. I have a regret. And the regret was, what I'm going to tell you is I wasn't really walking with God, and I could have made a difference in some of those lives. You're hot, you're tired, you're stressed, you're alone, and you want your mom. And I could have made a difference, but that's the other side of this story. While it was a good tour of duty, I drifted. That Christian fellowship that I had in college, that wonderful incubator that I had, my friends, and some of you have been in that environment. I'm in it here. We lost that. It's easy to do in the military. For those that have served, they'll tell you. You're far away, a lot of things going on, and that's not an excuse, but I drifted. So I want to give you a mini sermon inside the sermon. Drifting, you don't have to work to drift. Can I just say? You don't have to work to drift. Matter of fact, I'll tell it to you this way. If we don't put forth effort not to drift, we will drift. You don't have to do a bit of work to drift. So I grew up in Austin, and then my mother, I'm a single parent product, my mother got a job in San Marcos, Texas at the university there. Some of you know that. And you know, if you've been to San Marcos, what runs through the little town of the city is the San Marcos River. I can tell you where it starts. It's spring-fed, it bubbles up, and then it flows. Ultimately, I'm sure it ends up in the Gulf where everything ends up. But that's the San Marcos River. I grew up on that river. I know all about that river. And I can tell you that, and people do it to this day, a pastime for many is to grab some inner tubes, jump in with some ice chests, park yourself in that inner tube, and what do? You drift. There's no work involved. There's no navigation involved. It is the easiest thing on the planet to do, is just drift. And if you started in point A and you spend half a day, you end up at point B, and point B is way down the river from point A. That's a good analogy because, friends, I will tell you, take it from me. If we are not proactive in our faith, if we do not make an effort to keep our faith, you might as well go to the San Marcos River because we'll drift. And so my tour is up. I'm released. And I go home. Then the story gets a little muddy. The job that I thought was going to be really good, the next transition in my life, that job didn't pan out. The meager savings that I had, by the way, the Marine Corps and the military can do wonderful things. You don't get rich, just so you know. So I had some savings, but very little. That was gone. A relationship went south, way south. I found myself, just for the sake of time, at a place where I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my next steps were. I didn't know where I was going. And in good Baptist vernacular, I was lost. I can give you the politically correct answer, which was that sometimes when you have military personnel and you move to the civilian sector, that there can be transition difficulties in moving from military to civilian. I can tell you that, and you'd believe it, but you're my church family, so I'm going to tell you the real deal. The real deal why I was so lost is because I had gotten away from God. That's the real deal. That's the real deal. Didn't know it at the time. Didn't know that I had drifted so much, but that was the real deal. So, the story starts to get a little better. Around this time in my life, a cousin shows up. A cousin. I'd like you to write the word cousin. We have 3 words: pastor, acquaintance. Now a cousin, as in a blood cousin. It was a first cousin. It was a she. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. And she felt led. She knew a little bit of my struggles, a little. But for whatever the reason, God bless her, she felt led to show me a Bible that she was reading. This was not an ordinary Bible. You know how most Bibles are broken down by books of the Bible? We have the Old Testament, you have the New Testament, and you have books, and you have chapters and verses, and it all lines out. This Bible wasn't set that way. This Bible was broken out by date, specifically 365 days. Do you know where this is going? This was a Bible that was laid out in such a way to where it said this: you just read your section for a day. One day. Don't hurt yourself. 1/365 of the Bible. You read one day, then don't read anymore, and then get up and do it again the next day. And if you do that, you will have read in a year from Genesis chapter 1, Genesis, the first book in the Bible, all the way to the last book, Revelation. You'll have read the whole Bible. I was intrigued by that. I went and bought one of those, what they call daytimer Bibles. Read it once a day. It's the perfect, they should call it the Marine Corps Bible. You don't have to think, just execute. Just do what you're told. Perfect. About the same time, an in-law, write that down, in-law. Who'd have thought? An in-law. I-N-L-A-W, an in-law, felt led to give me a devotional book. A devotional book, there are lots of devotional books. The one he gave me was a bestseller in 1951. And no, I'm not that old. Maybe that's a reason he gave it to me. It was old, but it was good. A devotional book, if you never read one, it's one page. A writer writes one page. There's a couple of scripture references. It's even easier than a daytimer Bible. He felt led to give me a devotional book, said, this is great. You ought to read it. No hooks, no agenda that I knew of. Just read the book. So because of the cousin, that cousin, I was introduced to the Bible. By the way, I find it ironic when Dr. Young asked me to teach this. Last year, if you don't know, this Bible that I'm holding in my hand is a Bible that we as a church made the decision. We've never done this. I've been here a long time. We'd never done this, to read the Bible all the way through. And this is a Bible, you can get one right now if you want to. This is a Bible that is broken out by day, date, and time. So you can imagine when last year they promoted this, I said, oh, you just walked right into my wheelhouse because I've been doing this for years. And then the in-law gives me a devotional book. And the thing with devotional books is that's practical application of what we're learning about our faith. And so I started to read a devotional book, thanks to an in-law. So shortly after this period of time, all this is happening. I get to Houston, and I'm sharing with a friend. That's the last word that you have to write, is the word friend. Told you it was easy. I'm sharing with a friend that for the first time I'm starting to read a Bible. For the first time I'm reading a devotional book. I think things are happening. Good things. Something's good here. And the friend says, out of the blue, you know, there's a church you might like to go to. It's called Second Baptist. And here was the pitch. I remember it like it was yesterday. The quote was, the girls are pretty and the preaching, it's not half bad. I'm in. That was the pitch. Now, what's really important to know is this friend, who's still a friend, he was not a member here. He hadn't been going to church either. It was a visitor taking a visitor. I don't even know if that's legal here, but we did it. And we walked in this church, and just like many of you, I didn't come from a church background. I wish that was different, but I didn't. And I walked in here like some of you, and I said, this isn't a church. They're going to play a Final Four in here. This is no way a church. But it was, and Dr. Young was delivering a message, and he gave an invitation, and I thought about it. No. But I came back next week. It must have been my month. He gave an invitation again. Second time's a charm. And I found myself walking right down that aisle. And I joined this church. And as Ben says, I've been here ever since. To say that I got involved is an understatement. It seemed that every time the doors were open, I was here. And the reason I was here is because for the first time in my life, I'm in my late 20s by this time, 30, something like that. That time in my life, something really, really good was happening to me. I became very involved in our Sunday school program. A few years into it, they asked me to teach. Oh, one small sidebar. So I'm up here and I am into it. I mean, whatever this church did, I'm in it. I'm in it. Lisa Milne makes a comment. At one point, we tried to run him off, but it was too late. And so at the end of the day, I kept coming. And I know along that period, I said, Lord, I feel so good about myself, better maybe than I've ever felt about myself because of this Bible, a devotional book, and this church. It was all set up. I said, I just got to tell you, Lord, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure I have the gift of singleness. And at some point, if it would be okay, I would love to meet someone. In classic God fashion, it was just like the military. The word I got back was, son, whenever you're ready for a wife, I will issue you one. So the point of that is I spent years here, as some of the staff knows, as a single. If you're single, let me just tell you, those were some of the best years I ever had here. But sure enough, in a Sunday school class, I saw someone, and two things. She was really pretty, and she laughed at all my jokes. That's all you need. And we started to date, and the date turned into a marriage. And as Ben Young said, we started to have kids. And we had 4, and they were all girls. Once again, a sign that God has a sense of humor at my expense. So, what does all this have to do with evangelism? It has a whole lot to do with evangelism, because I asked you to write 5 things, 5 names, 5 words. I want to make sure we have them. We have a pastor, we have an acquaintance, we have a cousin, we have an in-law, and we have a friend. And here's the significance of this message. Please hear this. out of those 5 people that are in large part responsible for what you see here, for better or for worse, only one was full-time clergy. Only one. The other 4, then and now, are lay people. They're just like you and me. The cousins of mom, the acquaintance and the friend and the in-law, or dads and workers. They're not in full-time ministry, not even close. But because they had enough sensitivity to be open, when I crossed their path, they each did their part to bring me to where I am now. The second profound part of that, built off that first, is I realized when I started to prepare the lessons for last fall for our leaders and then again for you, it's very profound. Evangelism, doing our part for a world that I'll get to in a minute, that's not the job of the clergy. That's on you and me. That's us. That's us. So, it's 2020. It's a new year. It's a new decade, however you want to title it and pitch it and all that. So a little more context. I want you to believe, and I would like you to believe, and I believe I am, a person who is a glass half full type person. Glass half full. That's how I look at life. Matter of fact, that's not good enough. I would like you to think of me as a glass 3/4 full, maybe a glass 4/5 full. I have pressed that to the point where there have been times where my wife and children say, you're annoying. Okay, there could be worse things. I believe I have a positive outlook because of my relationship with the Lord and because of what He's done in my life and what He continues to do. How can you not? And so I don't choose to look at a lot of the negative things. Oh, I know they're there. I just don't choose to look at them. But I have to tell you, as I've taken stock of where we are and the importance, and by the way, I wasn't in on the meetings to determine that this is the year of evangelism. This is the year of focusing our influence. I had nothing to do with that, and I may be all wet, but I think there may be a reason why the church chose to do this. Because I will tell you, no matter how Pollyanna I want to be, and you know this too, I'm going to state the obvious. There is, in our country today, there is an agenda that seeks to rip God out of the very fabric of our society. And I understand that, and you understand that. And so I don't have all the answers today. I'm working on it. But when it comes back to what's happening out there, and it's probably been going on a long time, but now it's in our face, is it not? I get to see every day how we're going morally berserk in our country. And so, it keeps coming back to me. This was outside of what the church does. What can I do? How can I be a part of the solution? And you know what kept coming back? And here's my words. I'm going to leave you with a couple of notes and then we're about done. The message that I keep getting about all this, what our church is doing, what's happening out there, the message that I keep getting is, Michael, you need to be excited about your faith. Maybe more excited than you've ever been about your faith. And matter of fact, I want you to tell your church family, your brothers and your sisters, that we need to be excited about our faith. We need to be excited about what God is doing in our lives now and what God may be doing going forward and what our hope and our future is. And no, I don't know what all mine looks like, and maybe you don't know what all your looks like, but all I know is this: I'm supposed to be excited about my faith. Because I will tell you something. When you and I are excited about our faith, this evangelism, the people that you know that you're an acquaintance to, you're a cousin to somebody, you're an in-law to somebody, you may not like them, but you're still an in-law to somebody, and you're a friend to somebody. If you're excited about your faith, I don't want to talk about them right now, I want to talk about you and me. If we're excited about our faith, about what God is doing in our lives and will do, you'll be an evangelist. You'll know who maybe you might invite to church. You'll know who maybe you, I don't know, go to a Starbucks and say, "How are you?" You'll know who maybe to give a devotional book to, one that you read and you got something out of it. Hand them a book. You'll know who maybe to give a Bible to and say, "This has been helpful to me. Why don't you try it?" You'll know. That's evangelism. Notice, did you have to go to seminary? No. Do you have to memorize, I don't know, Romans chapter 8? No. You need to be excited about your faith. We need to be excited about our faith. And if we're excited about our faith, it's all up for grabs out there right now. People will be attracted to that. And you're an evangelist, and you didn't even know it.